I'd like to call this meeting to order of, this is a Vision Committee meeting, is that correct, Mr. Min?
That is correct.
And we're to hear a presentation tonight from a consultant, and if you would like to go ahead and take over from here, that would be great.
Actually, if Denise can call roll, please.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Denise.
How are you?
Good.
Good. Okay, I have Councilmember Dennehy. Councilmember Gonzalez. Councilmember Jaquez.
I think he was trying to sign on.
Okay. Councilmember Meisner.
There.
Councilmember Reed. Councilmember Brandon Smith.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Here.
Mayor Smith.
She'll be coming.
Okay.
Hey, John.
Yes, sir.
How long is Adam's presentation?
Yeah, I was going to ask if we could rotate these agenda items and have Adam do his.
Yes, he can go home. I'm open. You mind with that, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I'm good with that.
It's just you and I, so hey. If Adam's
Hey, I'm
ready.
here. I'm here, John or Tim.
Oh, sorry, Brandon. I can't see on the screen.
Yeah, I'm on the phone.
Yeah, but it usually shows you, I thought it.
So, yeah, if council is fine with that, Adam, do you want to go ahead and start your presentation?
Absolutely, that'd be great. So what we need to talk about is a fund balance that we have in our CMAQ grant funds for 2020. You may recall from our discussions last year that we are at the end of the use of these funds, and we had a balance that had been carried forward, which at the year's beginning was $850,000 total, which included our match. And last year we talked about prioritizing which road to pave and why, and landed on 8th and Bridge. 8th and Bridge was designed, went through CDOT clearance, has been bid out and was awarded last night, for way below what we thought it might be for, and that's really good news, but not necessarily bad news. We've got to, the bad news, I guess, or if there is any bad news, is the balance, we have to figure out how to spend really fast. Or not spend, but get encumbered. And what that means is we have to design a project and have it go through our environmental clearance process with CDOT by September to encumber the funds by that time. So my understanding from CDOT is it doesn't necessarily have to be built at that time. Certainly if we had encumbrance by September, it's possible we could still have a project this year. But my understanding is if it's encumbered by September, then we would have the following summer to do the work, and I could clarify that further along as we get along. But that's my understanding. So that being said, we brought you a list of streets last year, the balance of our gravel streets, and we went through some prioritization last year. We landed on 8th and Bridge, of course, because of what we had prioritized with that neighborhood previously, and basically, so we're at the same point where we were last July, essentially with the same list, same issues, so to speak, the same criteria for which we're evaluating these sites. And so, again, we looked at traffic count, which brings some of the sites to the top of the list. However, biggest issue right now is environmental clearance and, again, utility work. So we know just from recent discussions we've had with our 2A projects going into next year, and what we've already spent this year for water, we're extended there. We know that Atmos has a fair amount of steel replacement projects under some of these sites, regardless of what traffic counts they may or may not have. And then, of course, we have groundwater and stormwater issues with a fair amount of these streets that are problematic. So if you look at the attachments, there was a table that indicated or showed all of this criteria that I'm talking about, basically a yes or no, thumbs up or thumbs down on some of these sites and whether they were viable based on the criteria we looked at them with. So all of that criteria together, there's 3 sites that float to the top of the list that I'm confident that we can get survey and design done in time. Now, the wild card is always the CDOT environmental. So there's a good chance, regardless of which one we pick, we still may get through the CDOT environmental project. But they have advised us to choose the easiest ones to do as far as environmental, and they have not necessarily committed, but have said that they will do their best to fast track it because they know they don't want to lose the money in the region as well. So that being said, the balance of 4 Mile Lane that's not paved, Grape Street from Riverside to Brewster, and then Evelyn Drive, the balance of Evelyn Drive south of Tanner Parkway, or south of Eagle Heights. Those are all 3 streets that do have a high complaint level. They do have, especially 4 Mile Lane, have a high maintenance cost with grading and mag chloride, well, not higher than the other streets. None of those have any water or utility issues whatsoever. None of those have any right-of-way issues. None of them have any drainage issues or ditch crossings to contend with. Those are all big triggers for environmental issues. So again, we could go through the list. If there's any particular street you have a question on, I can kind of, because I know the table's not as detailed as some of these things that, for example, right-of-way widths and those sorts of things, but I can go through those with you to tell you why we didn't choose those as priority, even though they might have higher traffic counts. The reason we chose 3 streets is because, again, the volatility right now in the bidding scenarios, just like we've seen in 8th and Bridge, we're not sure where we'll be at cost-wise. We want to make sure we're prepared to spend all the money this time as much as we can, and so we want to be prepared with multiple bid schedules or sites prepared just in case we get another great price from a vendor. So we think 4 Mile Lane would be the priority to use up all the dollars. Of course, if it came in lower, then we can throw in Evelyn Drive and Grape Street. That's staff's recommendation. So that's what I have. I'm open for questions.
Adam, for council's knowledge, can you remind them what the match is on the city's part for these grant funds?
Yeah, it's just over 17%. And the match was budgeted.
Right.
Yes, Jim, go ahead.
Hey, Adam.
Yes.
What's the traffic count or usage on that 4 Mile Lane?
4 Mile Lane, we were at 242 at the last count. 200 has been our past threshold with CDOT for prioritization for dust generation.
So was the first part of 4 Mile, that was the same project, right?
Yeah, we've done paving on 4 Mile Lane in 2 segments previously. This will be the 3rd and final segment.
And how far do you think you're going to get? I mean, how many?
All the way to the city limits.
And the 242 is what, per day?
Yes. That's average daily traffic.
Well,
Again, 4 Mile Lane, because I mean, it's wide open out there. There's no, you know, the only utility out there is water. It's brand new water main. We have, you know, plenty of right of way to do what we need to do. All the drainage is established. We might have a couple crossing culvert replacements, but no issues to mitigate. And that's the same scenario with the other 2 streets on the list. Some of these other ones, I know Vine Street we've talked about many times. It's got the traffic count. It's just problematic from an environmental clearance standpoint and a utility standpoint. It's got a very small old water line under it. We're not sure of what other utility issues may be there. The right-of-way is too narrow. We would have to purchase right-of-way for parts of it. For sure, we'd have to purchase easements for drainage, and the drainage and groundwater is a major issue there. So even if we had the funding to address those other items, I don't think we'd get it through environmental clearance.
Why wouldn't it go through environmental?
Well, eventually we'd get there, but it would take too long because you have to address all those issues.
Oh, okay.
So if there's right-of-way needed, you have to that has to be taken care of before you get clearance.
Okay. All right. So we're probably never going to get to Vine Street.
Not with CMAQ funds under the current federal arrangement. Whether PM10 comes back at some point or there's a different funding mechanism, that doesn't mean we wouldn't get to Vine Street. I mean, we have paved streets without CMAQ money in the past that have been a priority list. Not something this big in my time here, but the most recent one was we did Colburn Lane because we had an issue and complaint problem with the new trailhead that was put there at New York and Colburn Lane. It was a very small project, but we had enough in that particular year to tackle it. So my guess is that Vine Street will have to continue to be addressed in smaller bites. Like maybe we've got to solve the drainage problem first. And we've worked a little bit on some of that this past year. That's tied to that. We did a little bit of work on Doug Cohen's property. We did a little work on George Turner's property, mostly just repairing and discovering. We found some things that we didn't know existed out there under George Turner's property. So, and we still have some of the drainage work that we're doing on the WPA outfall there at Fraser. So maybe it's just, I wouldn't say we're never going to address it. I would just say it's just not appropriate at this time for the CMAQ dollars.
Do you consider Vine Street to be, I realize it's a street that appears to be kind of like in the backside of nowhere, but would you consider that to be somewhat of a vital alternative route?
It is. It's a very good connection. It's an important connection. And we have gotten excited a little bit in the last couple of years because there's been some talk about the development of the TZAC property. And from my understanding, Nicole is still interested, but we're not sure what the status of that or when that'll kind of break loose. It's kind of like everything else right now with COVID. It was being talked about just as heavily as the riverfront stuff when that was going on. I don't know if this has kind of squashed some of their plans and so forth, but that's really, I think, is another big breakthrough that may happen in that area is the development of the TZAC property.
So is your priority then would be 1 4 Mile, 2 Evelyn, and then 3 Grape?
I would say 4 Mile, Grape, then Evelyn.
Yeah, and remember we had that conversation with the residents on already done the utility work and they were anticipating getting the CMAQ paving. So that's really important to me that we follow through with that and take care of Grape. Yeah,
and actually, just so you know, this section of Grape what we're proposing is to stop at Brewster. The reason we would stop at Brewster again is to make the environmental clearance easier. We won't go all the way to Blake because then we have the irrigation ditch to contend with and some right-of-way issues there at the corner. So we will stop a little short of the area that needs to be taken care of, but at least we'll have a big chunk of it done with this.
Is that gonna cut it with
Go ahead.
the fence?
So you kind of cut out. What was that?
So is that going to be acceptable to the residents on Grape?
Well,
Yeah,
I
go-
mean, we do 3/4 of it or we do nothing, I guess. I mean, I'm not sure.
Why are you stopping? Because of money?
No, because again, we're trying to keep the environmental clearance to a minimum. And
Okay.
so stopping at Brewster, we avoid, so ditch crossings is a big deal to environmental, right of way, easement, all that sort of stuff, historic. And then also the right of way is also narrower south of the ditch channel at the intersection of Blake. And so then you have some right of way issues. So we're just trying to, again, pave as much of it as we can. With the CMAQ dollars, it has to get ready as fast.
So we're looking at low-hanging fruit to take advantage of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Correct. Adam, I'm sorry, Councilman Meisner, I've got one
Go ahead.
question, if you don't mind. Adam, do we have to go through the same clearance process if we're doing that with general fund money?
No.
So we could pave the balance with general fund money maybe at a later time?
Exactly. Exactly. We could go through like we did with Colburn Lane, a small little section like that. Could possibly even do it in-house.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Good question.
John?
Yes, Jim, go ahead.
Adam, give me a little better description where that Grape Creek or that Grape Street is at. I mean, is that out there by the farms?
Yeah. Do you know where Anthony Lippis Sr. lives?
Yeah, I've been out there a couple times, but okay.
Yeah, his house is right on the corner of Riverside and Grape. It's the last turn you can take on Riverside before you get to the dead end.
Okay.
But there's probably a group of, what would you say, Ashley, 10 homes out there probably? Ish, yeah.
All right. I mean, I would prefer to spend the money in less outlying areas, but you know, it is what it is. I mean, I think I'd rather spend it here than not spend it at all.
Yeah, that's really kind of where we're at. And so I just want to make sure I've got you guys on board, and then we will plow forward as fast as we can with CDOT. You know, worst case is we don't make it by September, but you know, CDOT, I think, is on our team with this, and I think they're going to help us out. They don't
Okay.
want to see us money either.
I'm good, John.
So I've got a question or two, Adam. If I understand the memo correctly, we have 588,000 in the pot that includes our 17%. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And what we're trying to do is this is truly a use it or lose it situation.
Absolutely.
Okay. So if that's the case, you're going to bid out 4 Mile first and then see what the result is and then bid out Grape Street. Did I understand that correctly?
No, what we'll do is bid all three together as separate bid schedules. We'll package them together, and CDOT allows us to separate them in bid schedules so that it'll be A, B, and C, and we can award any combination of or one or two, whatever we want to do.
Okay, that answers my question. Where I was going with that is isn't it better to do exactly what you said, and even if we have to scrounge up a few $1,000s from somewhere, it's better than losing the what is it, 83% matching.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a chunk of money.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm good, and I say full speed ahead. Ashley says she's got a thumbs up, and Jim, you've already said thumbs up, right? Yeah.
Yep, there it is somewhere.
Building
Thumbs up from me.
And Brandon?
Thumbs up from me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thumbs up, Brandon. Great. Thank you, Council. Adam, I think you've got your direction. Please move forward, and
Thanks, Adam.
hopefully we get some good bids.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, put the Texas guy on.
So I'll do a little introduction here to Chris and Buxton, and Rick, feel free to hop in if you'd like. We've been talking to Buxton and a couple other companies that do similar type of work that Buxton does over the past year or so. This was a project that we anticipated this year, but given the COVID crisis and how that's affecting our businesses, that kind of disqualified some of the other retail analytic companies that we were looking at. They were more real estate companies. We've asked Buxton to come and give a presentation of their overall capabilities, both from economic development, recruitment, and especially their ability to help us with help our local businesses with their current situation. And they provide a wide suite of products and services, and we've invited Chris here to kind of talk to us about that today. Rick, is there anything you want to add to that before we get started?
I think you covered it. I've spoken to a couple of, well, the restaurants, a few of the restaurants anyway, in the restaurant group, and a few other people around town about the possibility, and hopefully a lot of those people are watching right now. But if you really want to have an opportunity to give businesses or provide businesses a tool, specifically, well, not just retailers, but in particular retailers, restaurants, give them a tool that they can use right now to determine what people are buying or what they're not buying here. This is a really good way to do it. It's in my opinion, it's putting money where money needs to go in order to return an investment on it, a return on the investment. So Chris is going to do his thing, but it's a phenomenal product. It really is. And it's like Ryan said, it's very wide sweeping. So I can use it also in determining maybe what we can bring into the community for other businesses and industry. Finding out what our population is capable of or likes to do, that sort of a thing. So I'll hand it over to you, Chris. Go ahead and show your stuff.
Thank you so much, Ryan, Rick. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you all for having me in tonight's vision meeting. Really excited to be here to showcase some of Buxton's capabilities, and as Ryan mentioned, really talk about the robust capabilities that we have in helping communities all across the country and positioning them to take more of a data-driven approach when it comes to economic development, recovery, and growth, truly putting citizens, and when I talk about citizens in tonight's presentation and throughout the conversation for tonight, I'm talking about not only your residents, but also your visitors and your workforce, and truly understanding them from a data standpoint and what are some of their needs, what are some of the wants that they have as consumers. So here at Buxton, we are a consumer analytics company, and positioning organizations and public sectors across the country in leveraging data for their economic development, growth, and recovery. So before I jump into the presentation today, let me make sure I'm sharing my screen with you. Please let me know when you can see my screen.
It's there for me.
Perfect. Everyone sees that? Perfect. Perfect. So tonight's conversation and presentation, I want to spend a little bit of time really talking through our background very quickly, just our background, some of the data and capabilities and technology that we have here at Buxton, and then really getting into the tools. And as Rick mentioned, getting into some of the tools that local business owners could leverage today in better understanding who their core customers are specific to their businesses, and then what tools can we position local leaders there in Canyon City to better understand the economic development opportunities on the ground, how to capitalize on those opportunities, and really take the right market validation to businesses and attracting those economic development opportunities. As I mentioned, I want to start off with our background here at Buxton. We are a consumer analytics company, and we've had the pleasure in working with over 850 different communities in the last 2 decades. And the communities that we work with range in all shapes and sizes all across the country. We work with communities that are less than a population of 1,000, all the way up to communities with population of over 500, or your metropolitan areas like a downtown New Orleans that we're currently working with. And I like to throw that out there just to let everyone know that we have worked with just about in any community, when it comes to uniqueness, rural markets, tourist destinations, suburbs, you name it, we have positioned these communities with a data-driven economic development strategy to capture their opportunities and putting citizens at the forefront of those strategies. A few of the communities that we're currently working with there in Colorado is someone like in Adams County Economic Development, Lamar, Colorado. We've partnered with them for over 3 years. Monument, Timnit. So there's a lot of experience that we have and a lot of success that we've had there in Colorado. But more importantly, as Ryan mentioned earlier in the introduction, our capabilities allows us to focus not only on retail development, but really expand and focused on a robust suite of economic development strategies that you all have there. And I want to touch on the data and technology that we're able to provide local leaders across the country. What really makes us unique here at Buxton, hitting on our data. So we are the largest aggregator when it comes to consumer analytics data. And what that really means is we have granular data to basically pull back the rooftop of every household in America to tell you how these individuals live their lives, how do they spend their money, what are the unique characteristics of those households that local leaders and local businesses need to know to capitalize and truly understand what are their wants and their needs. Financial data, behavioral data, attitude data, healthcare information, things of that nature to really define who your customers are there in your market. One of the most exciting pieces of data and capabilities that we have here at Buxton that we're leveraging is mobile data. And as a tourism market, very important piece to truly tell the story of Canyon City's potential and understanding who are the visitors that are coming into our market by leveraging that mobile data, understanding what are they doing while they're here, how long are they staying, where are they staying? And if they're not staying in our market, what are those other hotels or neighboring communities that they're currently staying at while they visit our region? So very exciting information that we're able to get through mobile data. And I'll talk a little bit more about that throughout this presentation. Now, taking all of that great data, granular data, and the most important piece is implementing the right tools for local leaders and tools that are going to be easy to use, help them to effectively do their jobs a lot easier, and helping local businesses to leverage these tools today and capitalizing and recovering in that growth that these local businesses are wanting to experience. So those tools, very quickly here, the main tool that I'll talk about today is our Scout platform. Our Scout platform is the powerful technology that you'll have access to all of the data that we have here in Buxton, run a number of different reporting capabilities. I talked about accessing the GPS data through that Scout platform and creating the market validation and understanding or better understanding the economic development opportunities there in Canyon City. We have a new consumer impact dashboard that we have created in light of the pandemic and the situation that we are all facing today. And this dashboard allows Canyon City to better understand the consumer traffic volumes and the businesses there currently in Canyon City. So very important tool that I'll highlight further in this conversation. And then our local store marketing tool. This tool hits home for your local businesses today, and which I'll highlight as well in this presentation. This tool allows your local businesses to better understand who are their core customers specific to their business. So for Pizza Madness, and I want to identify all of the pizza lovers in my market and in the region, and I want to create a marketing message that's going to get them to walk into my doors. This is a very effective tool that your local businesses could use today that we include in our partnership. And then the last thing that I want to hit on in this slide is the security of our data. Very important to hit on because as we're talking about Big Brother data, this information gets a little scary, but I do want to let you all know that we have the highest compliance when it comes to security of our data in the many organizations that we serve. And I do like to point that out for all of you all today. So the robust capabilities of our solutions here. I mentioned it earlier that we are not only focusing on retail development and helping your local businesses to recover, attracting new development into the market, but we have the capabilities to take our data and better understand our tourism market and how can we capitalize on tourism, get them to stay longer, spend more dollars in Canyon City. Hospitality, leveraging GPS data, as I talked about, we can identify what brand of hotel should Canyon City go after and has the highest potential to bring that brand into the market. Primary jobs, giving Rick a better understanding of who are all of the commuters, who are those workforce, where do they currently go to work, where are they coming in from, and better understanding the workforce there from a data standpoint. And the healthcare needs, one of the fastest growing verticals in economic development across the country, and understanding what are some of the gaps from a healthcare standpoint in Canyon City, what are the leakages, where do we see our citizens leaving to get some of those healthcare services, and what services could we realistically bring into our market. So I'll hit on that a little bit further in this presentation as well. And one thing to understand about all of the solutions that I've just covered for you is that our solution, the foundation of that is understanding your customers and putting customers and your citizens at the forefront of that strategy. And so having the granular data that we have here at Buxton, we want to get beyond demographics. We want to help you to understand from a psychographic level and truly understand the movements of your citizens as consumers. And the reason why we want to do that, an example that I have here on the screen, there's two individuals that live on the same street. And from a demographic standpoint, they look exactly the same. So for a local business owner, this information alone does not tell me whether or not these consumers, these households are going to shop in my store or dine in my restaurant. That is why here at Buxton, we leverage the power of consumer analytics. We have over 300 different data sources that go down to the household level to open the doors and truly identify who those individuals and those households are. You can see now we have a Steve, we have a Jim. Steve likes to work out twice a week, shops at Whole Foods, while Jim, who in that demographic information looked exactly the same, he lives his life and spends his money significantly different. He eats fast food 3 times a week. He shops at Walmart. He's more of a homebody, enjoys the entertainment of his own home. So right off the bat, a local business owner can differentiate these individuals and identify who are my core customers that I need to focus my dollars on in driving those customers into my doors. Or as we're looking at recruiting more development into the market, what type of development should I recruit and what realistic development opportunities could we bring in based on the customers that we have living, working, and playing in my market. So that consumer profile piece and understanding who your citizens are as consumers is the most important, crucial piece of our solutions. But for us to truly understand the market and the economic conditions there on the ground, we have to go further. So we want to understand the drive time trade area. How far are we capturing those folks to do their shopping, to do their dining in our market? What does that day in and day out customers look like? How far are folks traveling to get into Canyon City? What are they doing while they're here in Canyon City? So very important information in getting that unique thumbprint. As I talked about earlier, every community is unique. So for us to get that unique thumbprint of Canyon City, we have to look at what's going on the ground and looking at the market conditions, the area draws, such as the Royal Gorge, and who's traveling into the Royal Gorge, what hotels are they staying in, where are some of the vacancies that we have in downtown or different corridors here in Canyon City, and taking data to truly understand what our economic conditions look like. So once we're able to understand your market from a data standpoint, we are going to take that information and create actionable solutions for our local business owners and recruiting new business opportunities into Canyon City. So how we're able to support your businesses. As I talked about in this presentation, it's about understanding those local businesses' customers. So taking the granular information about the residents and the visitor customer profiles and letting your local businesses take that information and capitalizing on it. Having the on-demand reports that local businesses and local leaders know to be able to create through our tools to be able to make better business decisions for the community and for their local business. Demand reports such as retail leakage report. So give us an idea of some of the gaps that we have in our market from a retail standpoint. We see that clothing is a huge leakage. We see all of our residents leaving our market to go get their clothes somewhere else. Or entertainment might be a big leakage for you guys there. So understanding that leakage and the opportunities and how can local businesses take this information and maybe optimize the products and services that they're currently offering. Marketing tools. As I mentioned earlier, we have a tool called LSMX, which is short for local store marketing. This tool allows them to understand who their core customers are, target those core customers, create marketing campaigns right there off of that tool, and that account management support that we will be including in the relationship, making sure that everyone understands the data, understands the solutions. How can we evolve the partnership to where local leaders are leveraging this not only from an economic development standpoint, but also from a budgeting standpoint. As you will see, the consumer impact dashboard allows you all to see the consumer traffic volumes of the businesses there in the market, and being able to correlate those consumer traffic volumes to actual sales dollars for the businesses and for the market. And as I talk about evolving the relationship and having an account management team that's going to act as an extension of your economic development staff and helping local businesses to where they can directly contact Buxton's account management team for Canyon City and say, hey, Buxton, can you please tell me, how far my customers are coming from? Where do I see majority of my customers? Things of that nature, or what types of brands do these customers prefer? That is all information that your account management support team will guide local leaders and local businesses to have. And talking about entrepreneurship very quickly here, and then I'll jump into the actual tools that we have to offer in the relationship. So for entrepreneurship, and if you have those folks that have the capital and want to capitalize on that capital, we have the data, we have the tools and support to help them make the best business decision for Canyon City and for their dollars. We can help them identify, what business would be most successful here in the market. Should we, as I talked about, there's a huge leakage in clothing. Should we open up a clothing store? Is it a men's clothing store? Is it a women's boutique store? How do I market and identify my customers? This is all granular information. By taking a data-driven approach, we can help entrepreneurs make the best business decision for Canyon City. So that way, they don't see themselves closing the doors 8 to 12 months because I don't have enough foot traffic coming in, or I don't have the right products on my shelf. So capitalizing on what your entrepreneurs need and understanding what the market looks like there in Canyon City, leveraging this granular data is going to help make sure that those entrepreneurs are investing their dollars most effectively and efficiently. So now I want to take this opportunity to jump into my tools. I wanted to spend just very quickly a few minutes of our background and methodologies, but I want to jump right into the tools and show you the capabilities that we have here at Buxton. So I'm going to let this tool load up. It's been on idle for a little bit here. So the first tool that I'm going to jump into, and I believe this tool, and I know that this tool is the most impactful for our current situation that we find ourselves in with the pandemic. It's a tool that leverages GPS data to where we've already geofenced all of the businesses there in Canyon City and across the country and bucketed those businesses into a particular category. And we're leveraging GPS data to understand what consumers are going into those businesses and understanding those traffic volumes of the businesses. Very important piece, and I'll show you some of the different business categories and highlight some of the insights that we're currently seeing there in your market. I'm going to need to move. I have my Zoom on the far right here that I'm having trouble moving. Are you able to see the dashboard?
We see the slide.
I,
Got it.
No,
what I see is,
we don't see the dashboard, Chris.
no.
Elijah, is there something up there? Nope, that's the PowerPoint.
Yeah, if you can either drag your whatever dashboard you have open on the other screen to this screen so we can see it, or you can stop sharing and then reshare your other screen. It's up to you.
Did that work?
There you go.
There you go.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Elijah. Apologize about that. Can you see the dashboard? Is it a little, do I need to zoom in a little bit?
I can see it. I just don't know what it means.
Okay, perfect. Well, let's talk through that real quickly here. As I mentioned, this dashboard we've created for the current situation that we all find ourselves in is giving local leaders more insights to what is currently going on the ground. And rather than looking at just anecdotal data or going off of, hey, we're seeing a 50% drop in restaurants or clothing stores, we can leverage real-time data to give you insights on what is currently going on in your market and in the businesses. So I'm gonna highlight what you're looking at here. So on the top left of the screen here, you see categories. Right now we're looking at overall categories, and then I'm gonna refine this a little bit to get down to Canyon City. I have the capabilities to look at any state with this dashboard. And then, Elijah, I apologize, I'm going to use you one more time. How do I move the current Zoom panel on the far right or make that go away?
Your Zoom should be either showing a monitor of yours or an application. So I'm assuming it's showing your right-hand monitor if you have two.
Okay. Got it there. Perfect. So I needed to move the Zoom monitor there so I can toggle through these different variables here. So I have the opportunity to look at certain geographies. We're looking at the Colorado state right now. I can look at city, which we will jump into Canyon City. I can look at county, zip code, DMA, CBSA, depending on the market that I want to look into. So I'm gonna go into Canyon City. And then also I can look at multiple communities just to compare myself and see what is the activity that we're currently seeing in neighboring communities. Do we find those neighboring communities, customers going back into the stores there in their market, and compare that to Canyon City? I can jump into Canyon City here. I'll let that load here. Okay, now we are in Canyon City, and what you guys are looking at is an overall business category. We have over 320 different categories, and we bucketed every businesses that we've geofenced there in your market. And when I talk about geofence, it's basically drawing a ring or drawing a square around that particular business. So the Pizza Madness, geofencing that particular business and bucketing it based on their NAICS code into a category. And you can see that Pizza Madness would fall under the category of restaurants and eating places. So I'll toggle through that now. So restaurants and eating places, we'll use that as an example. And you can see the business activity, the consumer traffic activity for that particular business category currently in your market. So this is real-time data that you're looking at. And what I mean by real-time data, we actually have the data loaded up from the day of May 18th. So it's only 2 days behind, but we're updating and refreshing this data on a daily basis to give local leaders the most granular real-time insights to the consumer traffic volumes there in their businesses, in their market. So what we're looking at on this dashboard, you can see this red line graph here. So this red line graph represents the 2019 consumer traffic volumes for restaurants and eating places there in Canyon City. And you can see we've already had that projected out for 2019. And you can see The volumes change depending on the day. You may have a special event. I believe speaking with Ryan and Rick the other day, we looked at a certain day, the Whitewater Rapids event, and we saw a huge spike in consumer traffic volumes in the travel and accommodation and general merchandise stores. And you can see what that currently looks like for restaurants throughout 2019. And I believe this is one of the most valuable pieces of the dashboard, because as we all are working through economic development recovery, and we want to get our consumer traffic volumes back to that normalcy, it's important to know where you guys were at this time last year, so we can continue to monitor the situation by looking at the 2019 GPS traffic volumes. And now this green line represents the 2020 consumer traffic volumes that we're seeing in current day in 2020. And you can see how that compares. Now, I have the category pulled up for restaurants and eating places, but let's look at the full service restaurants, where we know that these service restaurants were closed down due to COVID-19. Now they're beginning to open back up, and we can see how COVID-19 has impacted the consumer traffic volumes for our full service restaurants. And I'll let that load up. So you can see here that our full service restaurants in 2020 was doing great, up to par for 2019. And then once COVID-19 hit, doors began to shut down. You get a better visual on the insights that this dashboard has given us in real time, the significant decrease that we saw in restaurant consumer traffic volumes. And you can see how that trend line is currently evolving as we begin to open some doors back up and open the restaurants back up in certain capacities. Then I can jump into another category here. I can go into general merchandise stores, give you an idea what that looks like for the market. As I mentioned, local leaders are leveraging this information to get a real understanding on what is going on in their market for the businesses and what type of volumes do they see consumers going into those particular businesses. And local leaders are leveraging this information and actually correlating that to actual sales tax dollars. So local leaders, I know that, and let this load up here. For local leaders in receiving sales tax reports, it takes about 60 to 90 days. So rather than waiting until June or until July to get April and May sales tax reports, we can begin to strategize and forecast what that budget would look like and start making a better, a data-driven decision on different budget allocations based on the consumer traffic volumes that we're seeing in business categories here in our market. And you can see the general merchandise stores category actually doing very well. Obviously, more folks are getting their groceries there in the market, and you can see a huge spike when the folks started running into the grocery stores and general merchandise stores to get their toilet paper and some of those essentials that folks ran into the store because of COVID-19. And you can start tracking those volumes here for general merchandise stores as well. So that gives you an idea of the consumer impact dashboard. Now I'm going to jump into our Scout platform. With our Scout platform, this gives local leaders and local businesses access to all of the data that we have here at Buxton. This is a very robust economic development tool that you can create the market validation needed to tell a better story and better identify the economic development opportunities there in the market. But more importantly, as I talked about, helping local businesses to better understand who their core customers are. So very quickly here, I just want to highlight a couple features, and then we'll jump into another tool. I can come in here and create any trade area that I like. If I wanted to look at a 10-minute, 15, 20-minute to get a better understanding of what's going on within that trade area, I can simply create those trade areas right here off of this platform. Zoom out a little bit. And once I create a custom trade area that I want to get a better understanding of, or if we can also look at different geographies such as city limits. If I just wanted to look at the political boundaries of Canyon City, we can look at that as well. A ton of different features there. But once I create that trade area, I can simply click on Create Report. And there's a number of different reports that's going to be valuable in local decisions, local leaders' decisions for economic development and local businesses to help them better understand their customers there in the market. There's a consumer propensity report that gives local businesses a better idea of the brand preferences that consumers have there in the market. There is a daytime population report, demographic report to get historic, projected, current demographics. I talked about healthcare and understanding the healthcare gaps in our market. We can run those reports and get a better idea of the different service lines and opportunities there in Canyon City. A retail leakage report, very important to understanding what are some of the gaps in our market, what are some of those development opportunities that we can look at in capturing, such as clothing stores, entertainment stores. I know that speaking with Rick and Ryan the last few months, you know, natural grocers may be one of those specialty grocer opportunities. And here at Buxton, we actually work directly with natural grocers to help them identify markets that they could be successful in based on their core customers. So very familiar with natural grocers in the decisions that they make for looking at different markets. And we have the unique capabilities and positioning communities to truly understand who are the right type of retailers for their market. And not only telling you, hey, there's a clothing gap, but what brand of clothing would be successful there in your market. So very valuable information in understanding the retail gaps in the market. I can run a profiles report to get a better idea of the different segments, different households, and how those individuals live their lives and spend their money. I talked about the GPS capabilities and running on-demand reports. So I can come in here and create a specific geofence or create a territory around a local business. Let's use Pizza Madness as an example. So Pizza Madness, what I've done is created a geofence. I want to look at all of the consumers that has gone into that particular business that I can capture with the GPS data here at Buxton. I can simply create a report, click on Buxton Mobile Insights, and this will automatically give me some criteria that I could toggle through and play around with, such as how many minutes do I want to see my customers coming from, 30 minutes, 120 minutes, what have you, and then also refine the dates a little bit. So if Pizza Madness wanted to see what 2019 consumers were coming into their stores, they can come in here and toggle through and put that specific time frame in there and click submit, and our capabilities will start running that report in the background and give them an answer on the number of GPS devices that we saw come into that store. Where did they come from? Who are those individuals? How do they live their lives? How do they spend their money? So then once we know that information, Pizza Madness can come in here or contact Buxton, get a better idea of who their core customers. So we'll have access to our segmentation guide. To truly understand the different characteristics behind the customers that we've identified for that specific local business or Canyon City as a whole. Who are those most valuable customers? So I'll let that load up in the background. And doing some research on the front end before the call, I noticed that Q64 was one of those dominant segments that we saw for Canyon City's market. And who is Q64, Chris? So we bucket every household in America into 1 out of 71 different segments to tell you exactly how those individuals live their lives and spend their money. So we can jump into Q64 and tell you the hundreds of characteristics behind those households. So let's just say Pizza Madness core customers were Q64, those established in society customers. Now I, as a business owner, Pizza Madness, I need to know, how do those folks like to be marketed to? Where do more customers that live their lives the same way, where do they live? how can I attract them into my store? So there's a number of different characteristics and data points that we can leverage in understanding those core customers for that particular business or for the market in general. So there's a number of different features here in Scout. I know I've had the opportunity to dive into these features with Ryan and Rick. For the sake of time today, I want to stop right there and jump into our LSMX tool, just because I want to have some time left over for some Q&A. So let me jump into that. And if we have some time, I will continue to highlight some of the Scout platform capabilities and features. But for our LSMX, this is one of those tools that Rick mentioned on the front end that I've highlighted a little bit to give local business owners an opportunity to take action on the data that we're providing to them and give them a tangible tool that they can actually go out and market to their core customers and understand who their core customers are. So this LSMX tool allows a business owner like Pizza Madness to type in where are they located, what types of products, what types of services do they have, and a little bit of background information about their business. And then that tool, which you can use on a smartphone or on the desktop, that tool will automatically give back results to tell that business owner where all of their core customers live within the market and how far they can reach those customers, how far those customers are willing to drive to get to that Pizza Madness downtown Canyon City. So you can see here all of the red dots would represent core customers for Pizza Madness. And as a business owner, what they would do is circle those red dots and have the opportunity to create custom marketing messages for those customers to get them to come into their doors. And there's marketing messages that can create through Facebook, Google search. So if I'm unfamiliar with Canyon City and I'm a visitor and I type in Google best pizza shop in Canyon City, that Google search and that ad that business owner has created, that advertisement will pop up because of that Google search. Some banner ads, prospect emails, they can send direct mails right to their home. And also a new channel that we've implemented is Instagram. They can create custom Instagram ads. So multi-channel marketing efforts that your local business owners can now have their hands on to create the most effective and efficient marketing to get more folks to come into their doors. And as we're talking about recovery and creating that custom marketing message for them, it allows business owners to get the message across to customers in the market, whether or not they're open. What types of services are they currently offering? Is it dine-in only? Is it carry-out only? Curbside pickup? So that tailoring that information or that marketing message to fit your business and what you currently are doing, and also throw some healthcare messaging in there to say, hey, we are taking the proper precautions, but making sure that your customers and potential customers are aware of that. So right here with our LSMX tool, your local businesses can have that opportunity to create those messages, and then more importantly, be able to track the results of the messages that they create. I always mention it. The last thing I want to do is create a Facebook message that no one clicks on, so they can continue to monitor how those messages and campaigns are currently doing. So we are providing multiple licenses into our LSMX platform for your local business owners to leverage and get that messaging across. About 7 p.m. here. I've been speaking for about 30 minutes. Ryan, I'm going to pass the mic back over to you and just let me know. I know you've given me 30 minutes to present today. Would you like me to go into Q&A? Would you like me to talk about anything more in detail? How would you like me to go about the time that I have?
Yeah, do you have any more presentation materials, or is there anything that you didn't cover that you think that you needed to cover?
You know, I wanted to stay high level as possible with the tools. Obviously, we can talk a little bit more in detail to a specific tool or just some questions that council members or mayor that you all have and dive into a little bit more of that information while I still have some time available.
All right, I appreciate that, Chris. Before we get to Q&A, there's a couple things I want to point out. Councilman Meisner, you've asked several times, how do you quantify or put dollars around, the bike trails and mountain biking, and what is the value of that to the community. With a tool like this, you could actually geofence a trailhead and really understand the type of people who are coming in, and whether or not they're spending money, or even helping businesses market to folks that are coming in to use those trailheads. So that's one solution to a question you've brought up many times. Another thing that I want to point out before you get to Q&A is the piece that Chris talked about with entrepreneurship. So, we have 2 restaurants that are getting ready to open. We've got the Lost Cajun and we've got the Bagel Shop. Both of those folks, they're going off of anecdotal, yeah, that would work here, and talking to people. Having a tool like this actually helps them put some quantifiable data behind that decision-making process, and you can really help those people, those entrepreneurs, make some of those decisions about opening their doors, or taking a step out. And when you open a business, you're taking a step out on a limb, and having a little bit better decision-making process behind that decision, and making sure that there is an actual market for the business they're trying to open. I think with that, we would turn it over for Q&A.
I'll start off here, and I'm sure that there'll be lots of questions as we go through. So Chris, we have a lot of prisons in the county, and my question is about the ability for a mischief, to use this tool for mischief. In other words, if you can identify people that work at the prison down to their address level, there's an opportunity there for mischief. And so talk to us a little bit about data security. Who would have access to this tool if we went with this, and what kind of safeguards can be built into here to make sure that that level of data doesn't fall into the wrong hands?
Hey, John, can he unshare his screen?
Yes, I can.
There you go. Thank you.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Councilman, thank you for that question, and I'll answer the first question about the correction facilities and being able to better understand where some of those workers coming from down to the household level, and how do those workers act as consumers. Absolutely, that is a question that we're able to answer, not only with our GPS reporting capabilities in Scout, but also one thing that I did forget to mention is there's a number of different, there's a multiple visitor profile analysis that we are including into the partnership, which a profile analysis is us taking the GPS data and taking a more granular look in answering some of the questions. For instance, the one that you just had, Councilman, about correctional facility workers and where they're coming from. So leveraging visitor profile analysis and taking that question back to my team for them to really put a number of different business rules in place to help us better answer that question is something that we have the capabilities in doing, and that is something that absolutely we can do. And then second, your question about security. I mentioned it a little bit early in the presentation about the compliances that we have here at Buxton, and the type of audits that we go through on a yearly basis to make sure that our security is up to par. And one thing that I can reference is that we work with healthcare organizations. We work with Mercy, Cook's Children, and you can understand that having that patient and sensitive data that data is very sensitive, and we have to have the highest compliances when leveraging customer level data. So that is something that we have the highest regard for, and we do have the highest measures in place for that. And you will have multiple licenses into the Scout platform, so local leaders will you could distribute that however you'd like amongst local leaders, or a private private business owner, if you wanted to give them a license, that is something that that is up to you and who you distribute those licenses to. Obviously, with the Buxton, the larger platform, the Scout platform that was highlighting and getting the in-depth data about the market and reporting capabilities, that is something that I would definitely think more of on who you give that to. Yes, Councilman.
Well, I didn't want to interrupt.
Oh, sorry. Waving, stopping me for a question.
I was raising my hand.
Oh, okay. Yes. So you have a number of licenses that you will have access to, and you can distribute that however you'd like there with your local leaders.
Ryan.
Yeah, I just want to go into a little bit more depth there on what the anonymity of data. So for display purposes and being able to identify two different profiles in the presentation, Chris had two actual names on there. That level of detail is not available within the system. Is that correct, Chris?
Yes. So as a company, we have that information, but that level of detail is not implemented into the actual platform. Just going back to Ryan's point and Councilman, your point, that security level of data.
Great, Jim.
So I guess I missed that because you didn't seem to answer John's question, but is it going to be possible for Rick to track correctional people or not? I pick on Rick because I know him.
Understanding of workers, but we're not able to actually track them to, or we don't give out that information to the public or to local leaders to exactly where their household is. What we want to do is just give you a understanding of what type of workers are there, what type of education level, and things of that nature. So no, not to the household level, and I apologize if I miscommunicated that. That is sensitive data, but just an understanding of what type of worker is that correctional worker there, employee.
So the example you used at the beginning that Ryan was referring to with the names, that wouldn't be possible in the version of software that we would receive.
No, that would not be possible. That is just an example example that I like to use in the presentation.
Because the same thing goes for, our all of our security staff. I mean, police department, whoever.
So basically, and to better answer that, and Councilman, the segmentation guide that I pulled up very briefly, that is the in-depth characteristics that you will have access to. So it just ties them back to a segment that says, hey, this person is Q64, and we're bucketing these individuals to that specific segment level. So there's not going to be a name, an address, anything of that nature will not be disclosed in the data information that you guys have access to.
But unfortunately, you have access to it.
It is a big brother data world that we live in now. Yep. So we do have access to that information, and it's very sensitive, as I mentioned earlier. So that is not something that you guys would have access to, but you will have access to the right data to help you guys make the best business decisions for the community.
And I think it's important to point out that companies like Walmart and all the big box stores, they have access and use tools like this to do their marketing. Unfortunately, it would be very expensive for our individual small business owners to gain access to a program like this. And that's part of the reason why we're looking at this, is to try and help level some of that playing field.
Right. I think you're selling me on it.
I've got a question. So what we would be purchasing would be licenses, if I understand it correct, and that's for a period of time. So because of the COVID crisis, I expect a lot of patterns are in flux and change. based on degree of lockdown and things like that. So we would have access to licenses for a period of time. Is that correct?
Right. You would have a license throughout the life of the partnership, and very important, like you mentioned, Councilman Hamrick, as we go about, the current situation and those consumer traffic volumes and how consumers act as customers, they're going to change, and we're going to evolve the strategy along the way to help local businesses understand the data, local leaders to understand the data and capitalize on it.
And I think it's important to note there are different types of licenses. So there's licenses for the Scout program, which are going to be probably limited to 5 or 6. Is that correct, Chris?
Yes.
And then there's the license to the LSMX, the marketing tool, which is what the local businesses can use to market. So, and I think Chris and I and Rick are working on determining how many licenses we would need from that standpoint. But we're talking in the 25 to 30 range, and potentially more if they're being actively used. So there's that aspect of it as well.
So I have some questions. Is it a package deal with Scout and LSMX and the business basic retail strategies, or is it divided into different package options?
So we have included everything within that, within the partnership, the scope of the partnership, yes. And typically we don't take an a la carte approach to the different tools. So all of the tools and all of the solutions are included in the partnership that we have laid out.
How many years do your average city use in a contract to have effective information to really make a transformation for business marketing and retention?
No, that's a very good question, Mayor. Thank you. So typically we put out a 3-year engagement with no penalty to opt out. We understand that local communities and local leaders' decisions shift on a year-to-year basis, budgets, constraints, what have you. So we typically put out a 3-year engagement. That's what we've seen, the sweet spot. And economic development is not an overnight event. It does take time to capitalize and attract those businesses that we're looking to see here in the market. But from a business retention standpoint, we can start capitalizing on these tools and some of this data right away. When the doors begin to open up, local businesses can start leveraging that LSMX tools and getting the right marketing messages to get customers back into their stores. And the visitors that we see traveling in the region, we can get them to start coming back into Canyon City with the right marketing messages. So that is something, business retention is something that we could definitely start seeing the ROI on the investment right away because of the tools.
So I know your business model is data driven, but do you have, and maybe it is data driven, this answer, and it might be anecdotal, but have you serviced cities in similar sizes as Canyon, and what has been their experience as a result?
Absolutely, that's also a great question, Mayor. Thank you. So we've worked with a ton of communities ranging in population sizes. That sweet spot for us, we've seen over the years have been the 10 to 50,000 range, because we see that some of those markets are needing the most help when it comes to economic development or capitalizing on the most opportunities possible for economic development. So taking our approach and our tools and support. So for someone like a Osage Beach, Missouri, who's a little bit similar type of market when it comes to tourism, they're under population of under 10,000 in population, but they drive tourism into their market for their Lake of the Ozark, if you're familiar with Missouri. So and a ton of different retail that they have going for them. So that is a tourism market that I would compare you guys to in the type of work that we're currently doing for them.
And I don't know if it was solicited or not, Chris, but the town of Monument reached out to me to give an endorsement to Buxton because they are one of their clients. They've seen effective use from it. Like I said, I don't know if it was solicited by Chris or not, but they did reach out.
I can say that I did not solicit that, but not to say that one of my team members did say, hey, give Ryan a shout. So Monument is one of the community partners that we have there in Colorado. We had the opportunity to actually attend a regional conference show with Monument and their local leaders, economic development director who just newly started, the mayor and city manager. In Fort Worth, Texas, there was a regional show for retail development, and one of our account management team had the opportunity to walk around and talk through the data as Monument's data and retail experts, talk to different retail brands to showcase why they should locate into Monument. So that's one of the highlights that we've had early on this year with that team there.
Okay. So Brandon, Councilman Brandon Smith, you're one of our business owners on Main Street.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear from you and what your impressions are.
I'm just trying to take it all in and just kind of fully understand it. But I mean, it sounds like a positive tool for sure. It's just with the COVID, I'm not understanding how we utilize it at this time.
So do you have an answer for that, Chris, as far as how we can use this as a tool to get
Absolutely.
COVID well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know during this time, it's, it's day to day and creating, there's not really a blueprint out there in how we get through the situation, but for local leaders and how they can start local businesses and how they can start leveraging this information is one, better understanding the customers and how customers are currently interacting to businesses in certain markets, and especially the market there in Canyon City, obviously, and seeing who are the customers that we see leaving their doors to go to dining options and retail options and living that normal lifestyle as consumers. And the most important piece is that, and Councilman hit on this earlier, times are evolving and changing, and because of the pandemic, some customers may not act like they once did in 2019. They might refine themselves into their house until there's a vaccine out. So to answer that question, Councilman Smith, we want to give you better insights by leveraging real-time data to understand who are the customers that are currently out and about that you can attract into your business. And then more importantly, who are the core customers directly for your business, so you can have an understanding of where are they currently located, where can I find more that look just like them, and potentially create marketing message to get them into my stores. Or it may be during this time, optimizing some of the product offerings by leveraging some reporting capabilities through Scout, or just getting a better understanding of the visitors that we saw coming into Canyon City. So a ton of different information and ways that you can leverage this information today, but more importantly, understanding your customers and understanding how customers are currently acting in the market.
How can we use these tools to recruit new businesses to come into Canyon City to fill in those gaps? So recruiting new businesses, and if we're referring to retail recruitment, that is actually our niche here at Buxton. That is how we got started in this industry and working with the public sector. And to hit on our background a little bit further, our background is helping retailers, and when I mean retailers and restaurants, we work with national brands like Natural Grocers that I mentioned earlier, Marriott Hotels, down to smaller footprint type retailers, and we help them to identify markets that they should locate into. So that is our niche, and we can identify the specific retail brands that would be the best fit for your market, that has the highest potential to locate there, and create the pursuit packages and tailor that information that really showcases the opportunities there in your market and why they should locate there, and have the contact information for those specific retail brands, and really working alongside Ryan and Rick to make a compelling case to that specific prospect. So speaking of Natural Grocers, when I was campaigning for mayor, I met with tons and tons of community leaders and business leaders and community members. And I would say almost every single one of them wanted a Natural Grocers. So can you walk me through that on how we could make that a reality for Canyon City potentially?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you know, natural groceries in Colorado is like the Trader Joe's of Colorado, right? And like you said, everybody wants a natural grocery. So how would we go about that? Is first and foremost understanding Canyon City's market, doing that deep dive analysis and the thumbprints, and understanding the customers and visitors there, and really seeing, you know, is natural grocers the best fit for Canyon City? And we're going to be honest with you, you know, and looking at the data, because we are an unbiased market validation firm. And so we're going to be honest to say, hey, is natural grocers a good fit? Do we see them currently locating in markets that look just like Canyon City based on the customers that you have there, and other variables such as traffic counts, such as different area draws, competition that they're going to look for, co-tenancies that they're going to look for, such as, you know, what businesses do they like to locate to? But those are so many different variables that natural grocers is going to want and need to see before they make a decision to look into Canyon City further. So that is the market validation, the deep dive analysis that we're going to do for Canyon City in identifying what grocery store would be the best fit. Is natural grocers the best fit from a data standpoint? And let's create the market validation to go after that grocery store.
Okay.
Chris, do you also do site analysis on that?
Yes, so we can look at different sites that they're currently located in and take a deeper dive. The beauty of the Scout platform, you're not limited just to Canyon City or your region. You can get a better understanding of different markets within the region, what's going on there, what type of businesses, such as that natural grocers, you know, what businesses surround that groceries, that natural grocers in that market, and get a better understanding of that. So you are not limited in looking at some of the competition in the area.
Okay.
Yeah, Jim.
So under the assumption that we acquired this licensing or licenses, just quickly, how would we use this? Would Rick in fact be utilizing this to work with particular businesses or to consult with businesses? And then we would also offer a variation of that program to businesses? I mean, exactly, or not exactly, but overview. How do we take this tool and put it to use, or who does that?
Yeah, so it would be Rick. You know, we do have, you know, we have the Main Street program manager position on hold. Certainly a Main Street program person position could also help utilize this. You know, those 5 main licenses that we talked about, we could form partnerships with Fremont County Tourism Council, so that they could use it during, you know, doing their tourism marketing and have a better spend, a more optimized spend on their tax dollars that they're bringing in for tourism marketing. We could also partner with potentially the train or the bridge, so that they're optimizing their marketing as well, and making sure that they are you know, targeting the right markets as well. As Chris mentioned, hospital could also be a potential partner as well. You know, taking a look and seeing if there are other services that they might want to offer based off of some of the analysis that is available through here.
And Ryan, when you say partnering, you mean to help pay for it as well?
Potentially, yes. You know, we had some of those discussions before COVID. We would have to go back and revisit some of those discussions after the fact. But absolutely, if you know, if that is something that we could do, I certainly would love to have partners on this from a cost share perspective as well.
So, hey, this is Brandon. I definitely agree with Ryan. We definitely need to go back and look at, you know, revisiting some of this with the virus pandemic situation. But I will say real quick, as a business owner, having this data, it is a positive tool. I know for myself through marketing campaigns and that, it is tough to see what marketing is working, what advertising is working. And if we had a tool like this that could be utilized, it kind of paints a different picture, because I don't know about any other business owners in Canyon City, but word of mouth seems to be the biggest marketing tool we still have here. So utilizing data like this can definitely open some doors.
And
Yeah,
I would,
if I can add to that, the data can open some doors, but we're also competing against, in terms of attracting business here, in terms of attracting people here for tourism, we're competing against other communities that have a lot more resources than we do. And this helps us level the playing field a little bit because it gives us the ability to find that data that other communities are using to attract people to their community and businesses to their community. So word of mouth,
I totally agree.
I can agree with the word of mouth entirely because when I was driving Jeep tours, people would ask us, where's a good place to get a steak? Where do you go for this? Where do you go for that? And we can use this data now on a much broader scale than just a Jeep tour driver. We can use it as a community to get the word out. And as far as the how we divide up who we work with, there's also the LSMX licenses that we would need to figure out. So maybe the industry groups that I'm creating, we work with those industry groups and we work toward instead of, we'd have to be careful working with individual companies because you don't really want to be unfair, but give somebody advantage over another. But as industry groups, there's a lot of information there that can be gleaned from the data. And it's what, how old is it? 2 days old. So seasonally we can adjust, retailers can adjust, and industry can adjust.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, Rick, because from a seasonal standpoint, how you market to the tourist crowd versus how you market to locals is extremely important.
Yeah.
Ashley, you want to jump in?
And
go ahead and let Brandon go.
it takes some of the financial pressures off of the actual business because I know I've paid for Yelp in the past. I've paid for Google and as a small business, sometimes utilizing all those marketing tools, you look at your expenses and you don't know if they're working. Yelp offers, data for clicks and all that, but in reality, in our demographic of the world, we don't really know if that's working. We don't know if print ads or radio ads or TV ads are actually bringing people in. So this data actually is right there in front of you for you to see that it's working or not.
There is one point of clarification I want to make sure council's aware of, which is, we're providing the tool. The businesses would still have to pay for the marketing and advertising themselves.
Correct, but it would be one. It would take off instead of paying for multiple marketing campaigns as a small business. You'd have this one tool.
Absolutely. Correct.
Yes, Ashley.
So we talked a little bit about the marketing, but also the products and the audience is a really huge thing too. And I think COVID has actually brought that to our attention even more now during this time than it did before. I mean, we already knew we had a struggling downtown. It's producing less than 2% of our gross revenue. Anecdotally, a lot of information from our citizens that there wasn't something that was drawing them to downtown. And just one example of COVID making this kind of come to fruition is our Royal Gorgeous Deals online auction. Other cities that are smaller than us also had online auctions. They also have vibrant downtowns. We raised $9,400, which was great for those businesses that got those funds. It was absolutely needed. But Chaffee County got over $110,000 and Leadville got $50,000 from the exact same auction. We digitally advertised and marketed like crazy. We had 1.5 million people look at our ads and 30,000 people browse our auction, but they weren't buying. We didn't have products. And there could be a lot of different reasons why that was, but one of those reasons could likely be that we didn't have products that they wanted to buy. And I was talking to Catherine Carell today from Downtown Colorado Inc. and kind of about that a little bit, because I'm going to be presenting it tomorrow on a state level. And she says, this is kind of a time for Canyon City in our businesses to really have a come to Jesus moment, and to find out, who do you think your audience is? And you might turn out through this Buxton, you don't have an audience with what you're providing. Or if we want to have an audience, this is what we need to have and need to stock our stores with. And we needed it before COVID, and I would say that we need it even more now to see our existing businesses exceed and grow and excel, but also to invite those entrepreneurs who are really excited and energetic and wanting to really excel in the business world, to bring them here into Canyon City. And those are kind of my little 2 cents that I've been kind of learning. We've studied Buxton before when we were trying to get a downtown development authority. Everyone was absolutely enthusiastic about it. I've been reaching out to a number of community groups, including our business leader task force for COVID, and they're absolutely ecstatic about it too, hands down.
And full transparency for council, I have used Buxton before in another community, and comfortable with the product, and certainly comfortable with their customer service and their account management.
That's not a necessary declaration.
Well, it's good to know you've had experience in that. It sounds like it was favorable.
Right. Yeah, I think that's, I think that is important to know that you've experienced them and that you're pleased with what you think the potentials are.
So should we talk about money?
Yeah. Briefly, I mean, what are we looking at here? I know it's more than $5.
with a couple of zeros, but I know I've had the opportunity to present Ryan and Rick a more formal proposal to look at and what's going to be included in that partnership. And what we would be looking at is at a $50,000 investment per year. That is going to include everything that we've discussed today and more. And when I mention more, there's a number of visitor profiles that we're going to be looking at. As Mayor Smith mentioned, getting a better understanding of seasonality and what type of consumers change during those seasons, and how can we capitalize on what they're wanting and needing to see. And so that relationship is going to include also a hospitality analysis to identify a specific brand hotel that we can go after and bring into the community, along with that retail recruitment that we talked about, the LSMX licenses and the consumer impact dashboard licenses. So $50,000 investment on an annual basis.
So I have a question there. The number one, is there any data that you do not sell, that you collect?
Good question, John.
That is a, Councilman, that is a great puzzling question. Data that we don't sell. Do you mind going a little bit more in depth with that question for me?
Well, so this circles back to my Bureau of Prisons question about address data. So you said that you do have that data, and my question is there data that Buxton collects that they do not sell?
Yes. Facility and workers question that you had earlier, and I apologize, I misunderstood that question early on. But yes, that is sensitive information and data that we would not give anyone access to in understanding that information.
Okay, and I do have a follow-up question. So if we went into a partnership with Buxton, is there training? Do you provide training as part of that? Is it, and break that down a little bit too for me. Is it city staff that you train, or do we have a select group of businesses or city council members? How will that work?
Yes. Thank you. So our account management support and what training would look like, and just following up next steps into executing a relationship. So first and foremost, we would have a kickoff call where we'll invite local leaders, Brian, Rick, and the team that's going to work on that economic development, recovery, and growth, and truly understand, hey, what are our goals, what are our challenges, and really lay out what the relationship would look like throughout the whole year. And so we'll provide training for the Scout platform, for all of the tools that we have included in that relationship. So you'll have extensive training. We'll provide training videos. But one thing that I do want to point out, the Scout platform, yes, it is a very robust tool with a ton of different data in there. But one thing to point out, it is a very easy to use tool to where, your account management team, which you'll have an account management of 4 Buxton employees, and 2 main point of contacts for you all there that you can contact directly at any time of the relationship. The account management team will actually, if we set up and Mayor Smith talking about the Economic Development Recovery Task Force, if they want to host weekly calls with that task force and include Buxton into that meeting, please let us be a part of that meeting so we can talk about the data. But Councilman, just extensive training and really a roadmap into what the relationship would look like and how can we leverage these tools and this data to its full potential. In the LSMX platform and licenses, if we wanted to host a local business night, inviting local businesses who want to get access to the tools and some of the reports and just run those reports one-off basis for those local businesses, we are more than happy to do that. I think that at this time, that is something that we would be more than happy to host for you all there, and maybe an hour and a half, 2-hour session to where we have a local business night and truly understand what the data is telling local businesses and how they can take this data and create actionable solutions. So, Councilman, I know that was a long-winded answer, but I think I left off some pieces there that I needed to add into that account management support team.
Ryan? Ryan, oftentimes when we make a big investment, we run reports to see what kind of return on that investment we would get. Have we been able to do anything like that? Is there any type of projection on the return on our investment?
I think that's a hard one, especially with a tool like this when you're talking economic development. As Chris mentioned, there's a bit of a lag there. So you're not going to start seeing some of those hard results probably for anywhere from 6 months to 18 months after the engagement has started. I think some of the things that we could see and how we could track that would be obviously increases within sales tax within certain districts and things like that. But overall, I think, and Chris mentioned this to Rick and I on a different call, but utilization rates of the LSMX tool, they can run reports telling us whether or not the businesses are using those licenses or not, and help us target if they're not being used, what do we need to do, and go and provide additional training to make sure they are being used appropriately. From a recruitment standpoint, again, I think you don't see those results probably for a year to 2 years down the road because of the process of going through the development process, and businesses are typically planning store openings, probably 12 to 18 months into the future. So you start seeing some of that engagement early and having those conversations. But as far as a hard return on investment, you're not going to see that probably for at least 12 months. And Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that would be kind of my assessment of it.
Yeah, that's helpful, Ryan. And just to add to that, one thing, yes, retail development, it does take time. It's not an overnight event. And the ultimate measure of success is us attracting retail into the market or some type of development into the market. In addition to that, we can measure success in the visitor profile analysis and helping you all to better understand the visitors and where can we find more and track more into the community. We can track those results and say, hey, this is the visitor traffic that we saw for the summer of 2020, which I know it's probably a horrible example to use because of the time, but we can track the results of what we saw in one season and follow that up with another analysis the next season and start tracking the visitor results and what are the volumes that we're seeing coming back into Canyon City. That is one way that we can track results and data, and your account management team will help you guys have the insights for those results.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. You know, looking at that mobility data and looking at the 2020 line versus the 2019 line, especially when you're talking about individual businesses, trying to help them close that gap so they're getting back to where they were last year is another way that we can kind of track some of the success for this.
And I would add from a recruitment perspective too, attracting new business to the community. This data should help us get a much better handle on who to try to attract, which should really up the prospecting, I guess you could say, instead of community members saying we could really use this or we could really use that, and then just kind of going down the rabbit hole to see if that would work. We would have some verifiable data of industry or businesses that we could actually go try to attract. And that should really up the ante on prospecting at the very least. And conversion, of course, would come after that. But, you know, I would think on the prospecting end of things, this would be a much more reliable way to go about it than just cold calling out into the specific businesses that we think would be really cool here, you know.
Mm-hmm. So,
Jim, Ashley, I know Jim's been trying to jump in. Let him jump in.
Just a couple quick questions. One, you mentioned something about that we would have 4 Buxton employees that were supporting us.
Yes.
Is that mentioned? Is that specifically mentioned in whatever contract I assume we're going to sign?
Yes.
And that contract, is that original contract an annual contract that's renewable or a 3-year contract?
So that is a 3-year contract that there's opt-out language in there, so you can evaluate the partnership on a year-to-year basis. If we don't meet your expectations or we're not seeing that ROI that we discussed on the front end, then that is something that you guys can evaluate before going into that 2nd or 3rd year of the relationship.
So, Councilman Meisner, it would have the subject to appropriations language
okay,
as appropriate under Colorado Revised Statute.
I'm done.
Ashley?
So Ryan, I did mention before that I feel like this is a tool that we probably need even more because of COVID-19. However, just as a devil's advocate question, if we do go into a long-term recession or a deep recession because of the downturn in the economy, will this be a tool that carries us through that, or will it become a tool that we aren't being able to take full advantage of?
You know, I think it's still a tool that we're going to be able to take advantage of. Even during a recession, there are still businesses that grow and expand. And I think, you know, just like we need it now more during COVID-19, if it was a deep recession, we probably still need that data during a deep recession as well, especially if we're looking at trying to provide our businesses with actionable data to help them market their businesses and be successful.
Chris, was Buxton in existence during the last Great Depression, or that we had?
Yes, we were. So we've been working with communities last 2 decades. We definitely were in existence, and we actually saw a very high rate of communities partnered with us during that time, and giving them more answers to the current situation and how they can, go about economic development, growth, and recovery. That is definitely something we did not have the capabilities that we do now, and I believe we've created tools like the Consumer Impact Dashboard that is leveraged for the current situation, and actionable data and real-time data. So yes, we were a part or in existence during that time.
So I think that's a great point. When I used Buxton and La Junta, they didn't have the mobility data. They had just launched the LSMX tool, and many other capabilities they have now that I didn't have then, and I still paid $50,000 back then for it.
Chris, I've got one more question. So on the database, the live database that you actually used to demonstrate here tonight went back to August of 2018. if we partner with Buxton, will that backward look be expanded? Will we go back further in time?
So the furthest that we can go back with the GPS, that reporting capability that we're looking at, is actually 2017. So that's the furthest that we can go back in the GPS data that we have in-house. And then we have, with that reporting capability, we have GPS data all the way up to as early as May of 15th, so 5 days behind. With that particular reporting capability, and the dashboard is only, I believe, 2.5 days behind because we updated on a afternoon basis.
Thank you. Jim? Yeah. Oh.
I'm, you know, John, and Ashley, we got to do something, and I'm intrigued with what I hear, but I realize we can't necessarily see results in a year, but the results that I would be looking for is the involvement of the businesses and not necessarily end result. If we can get a reasonable percentage of our businesses to utilize portions of this, I think it's a success. I think it will be a success. And I don't know that we can measure it from a monetary standpoint at the end of 1 year, but you know, I think I'm game for trying the program, and if it doesn't work at the end of a year in terms of getting people involved in using it, then we scrap it, so long as the agreement meets the legal issues, which Ryan will take care of. So I'm a thumbs up.
Yes, Rick, you had a comment?
Yeah, I agree. You know, we're approaching this right now as somewhat of a COVID recovery strategy, but I also look at this much more long-term and on a much bigger scale in terms of diversifying the economy here, so that we don't have future huge issues. So I'm obviously looking at it much more long-term, and there's a lot of data in there that I can pull out of there for, you know, labor pool, and you know, there's just a lot of information that can help us long-term in this.
You know, to add to that, I mentioned this briefly, but I think COVID is going to tell us, the city, that while we love tourism, we need to diversify, folks, because we're going to take a hit, a big hit.
Yep.
Ashley, did you have something to say?
Well, number one, we need to make sure all of our other council members watch this video. I think it's been incredibly informative and even exciting. They're the ones that are going to be voting on this as well, and they need to watch it and be informed before this comes to city council. And then Ryan and Rick, when we hired you, Ryan, we hired you because you were our economic development specialist. We wanted to be 100% about, well, mostly 100% about economic development, as well as fix our streets and potholes and take care of those basics. And that we would give you the support that you needed so you could be successful. Can you expound on that? Is Buxton part of that tool that you need?
Yeah, but Buxton is part of that tool. You know, to be honest, when you hired me to be the economic development director, you know, I was actually looking at bringing Buxton in 2017. But the budget situation changed within the economic development department at that time and never caught up. I think that, you know, 3 years later, here we are. I still think it's important to bring in a tool like Buxton in order to help guide some of these decisions and strategies that we're trying to come up with for diversification and for helping our existing businesses.
Brandon, did you want to jump in here?
Looks like Brandon may have jumped off the call.
Okay, if that's the case, then from my perspective, I think that you know, we don't have to evaluate where we're going to be in 6 months or a year or 2 years. I think that we have enough information now to take the next step, and I think that's what we need to do.
Okay.
We will bring this forward to the June 1st agenda, and we'll encourage the other council members to watch this video so they're informed for that discussion.
Would it be possible to have Chris there for that June first meeting too, in case those council members have additional questions? Or at least field those questions beforehand?
I'll be happy to join that meeting. Would love to be a part of that to answer those questions and beforehand as well. If there's any questions that you can think of or that comes to mind after our conversation today, feel free to reach out. I know Ryan has my email address. This is usually, before the meeting, I usually hand out my cards, but Ryan has my email address. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions, any more information that I can provide to help you all make the best decisions for the community.
Thank you. I think it's really helpful to have the representative there when we make the actual decision. So that would be nice. Thank you.
Okay, is there any further discussion or comments?
Thanks, Chris.
All thumbs up here.
And a thumbs up today. I feel like it's necessary that I do it as well, if that's okay.
Sure.
You're like the mayor, you
again,
can't vote though.
Thank you all so much for including me in tonight's meeting, and it's been an absolute pleasure in introducing Buxton. I hope this information has been beneficial to you all. I look forward to hearing next steps and being a part of the June 1st meeting.
Thank you.
Got it.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
And,
everybody. Thanks,
meeting is
Chris.
adjourned.
Thanks. Thanks, Rick.
You're welcome. Thank you.
See y'all.
Good
All right.
night.
Good night.